Let's do an anatomy review of the pancreas, the thyroid, and the spleen. First, let's take a look at the four abdominal quadrants. We have the right upper quadrant, the left upper quadrant, the right lower quadrant, and the left lower quadrant. This can be very helpful in locating or describing the location of the major organs in the abdomen. And this is a very common system used in the medical community. Let's start with the spleen. The spleen is the largest lymph organ. It's located in the left upper quadrant, or the left hypochondrium if you're using the 9-quadrant system, more commonly used by anatomists, just below the diaphragm. It's surrounded by a fibrous capsule that extends inward to create compartments. These compartments then divide the inner part of the spleen into white pulp and red pulp. So the white pulp is the inner region of the compartment, and it contains lymphocytes. The red pulp is the outer region of compartment, and it is a network of reticular fibers surrounded by blood-filled sinusoids, hence its red color. Again, largest lymph organ, and it functions in defense, hematopoiesis, red blood cell and platelet destruction, and acts as a blood reservoir. In defense, it's a site of lymphocyte proliferation and immune surveillance and response. There are macrophages here that remove microorganisms from the blood, which we call phagocytosis. In hematopoiesis, this is the formation of blood cells. Before birth, this is the site of red blood cell formation, and then if you recall after birth, it is red bone marrow. Red blood cell and platelet destruction occurs here in the spleen. Macrophages remove ruptured, worn out, or defective blood cells. And remember, red blood cells live about 120 days, so they're constantly being removed and replaced with new ones. And the same happens with platelets. As a blood reservoir, the spleen can store blood platelets up to 1/3 of the body's supply of platelets, and then break down products of red blood cells for reuse. So the body will reuse all but just a few components of a red blood cell to make a new one. Here's a picture of a spleen in its normal position under the diaphragm. And here are the features of the inside of the spleen again. The white pulp and red pulp identified here. White pulp, in short, just involved with immune function. The red pulp, very rich in macrophages and disposes of worn out red blood cells and bloodborne pathogens. And the pancreas. So the pancreas is not associated with the lymphatic system. This is an organ that is also an endocrine gland, and it is part of the both digestive and endocrine systems. It's a triangular gland positioned behind the stomach. It's located retroperitoneal, meaning behind the peritoneal tissue, or in the back of the peritoneal cavity. It has a head, a body, and a tail. And the head abuts the duodenum, just to give you an idea about position. It is both an endocrine and exocrine gland. Most of its tissue is exocrine in nature, meaning its largest function is digestive. However, it does have a major endocrine function in the body. And labeled in this pancreas, you see the pancreatic duct, or duct of Wirsung, empties directly into the duodenum at the ampulla of Vater. Inside the pancreas, if we take a look microscopically, we'll see two types of tissue, the pancreatic islets, or islets of Langerhans. This is the endocrine portion of the pancreas. It contains alpha cells and beta cells. Alpha cells produce insulin, and beta cells produce glucagon, both hormones that help regulate blood sugar. And then acinar cells are part of its exocrine function, and they produce pancreatic juice, which aids in digestion. So exocrine function, again, pancreatic juice aids in digestion. It releases pancreatic juice in response to CCK, or cholecystokinin, from the small intestine. And about 1,200 to 1,500 milliliters of pancreatic juice are produced daily. It consists of protease, amylase, and lipase. The endocrine function, again, beta cells produce glucagon, which elevates blood sugar. Alpha cells produce insulin, which lowers blood glucose levels. And moving on to the thyroid gland. This is an endocrine gland. It is an H-shaped gland, to describe it, located in the anterior neck at the level of about the second tracheal ring. It has 2 lobes separated by an isthmus. There are 2 types of cells here. Follicular cells produce thyroid hormone. Thyroid hormone is really a combination of thyroxine, T4, or triiodothyronine, which is also known as T3. And these hormones, collectively called thyroid hormone, regulate the metabolic rate in the body. And then there are parafollicular cells, or colloid cells, and their role is to produce calcitonin, which has an impact on blood calcium levels. It actually functions in opposition to parathyroid hormone and lowers blood calcium levels. Thyroid hormone is a major metabolic hormone. It is synthesized from iodine, hence the reason that we see iodized salt in the world now. It has a cholinergic effect, meaning that it increases metabolic rate and heat production, plays a role in the maintenance of blood pressure, regulation of tissue growth, development of skeletal and nervous systems, and has reproductive capabilities. Homeostatic imbalances can lead to a variety of conditions. Hyposecretion in adults creates a condition called myxedema and goiter if due to a lack of iodine. Hyposecretion in infants can lead to cretinism. Hypersecretion, on the other hand, can produce Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune disease characterized by elevated metabolic rate, sweating, rapid and irregular heartbeat, nervousness, and weight loss. It can also lead to thyrotoxicosis. Here's a picture of goiter. You can see the enlargement in the throat area, so the thyroid gland has enlarged due to the fact that it hypofunctions. So the enlargement is to increase the amount of thyroid hormone that the thyroid can produce. And then Graves' disease, you see a very common trait is protrusion of the eyeballs, and it results in exophthalmos. Parathyroid glands are located on the backside of the thyroid gland. There are about 2 to 6 of them, and they produce parathyroid hormone, which works in opposition to calcitonin. Its function is to raise blood calcium levels, whereas calcitonin, if you recall from a few slides back, lowers blood calcium levels. And that concludes our presentation on the spleen, the pancreas, and the thyroid gland.